What if every single time life knocked you down wasn't just something to survive, but was actually the raw ingredient for your biggest breakthroughs? I mean, what if you could actually build a system where stress and failure don't just make you resilient, they make you fundamentally stronger, more capable? This isn't just some nice idea, it's a learnable skill. And today, we're going to break down the science of exactly how to do it.
The ultimate secret of high performers isn't resilience. It's something far more powerful. We'll show you the counterintuitive scientific law that guarantees you don't just recover from failure, but you use the stress of every setback to automatically get stronger. Now, this isn't just some feel-good quote. It's a real principle from engineering and biology. The whole concept is called anti-fragility. And think about it like this. What's the opposite of a fragile wine glass? Most of us would say something robust, like a steel cup. But that's not quite right. A steel cup gets hit and stays the same. An anti-fragile system gets hit and it gets stronger. It's designed to literally gain from the very disorder and chaos that breaks other things. It's about moving past just surviving and starting to profit from the mess. So here's our game plan for this masterclass. We'll kick things off with the anti-fragile paradox itself, this wild idea of gaining from disorder. Then we'll dive into the fragility trap, because we got to understand why just being resilient isn't cutting it. After that, we'll build the anti-fragile system together, piece by piece. We'll look at the science of gaining strength, why this actually works on your brain. Then we get super practical with your 3-step protocol. And finally, we'll wrap it all up and show you how to truly engineer your growth. All right, let's jump right in. The anti-fragile paradox. This is a total mind shift. We're taught to build walls, to make our lives shockproof and predictable. But this paradox says the real key to massive growth is in the exact opposite direction. Think about a kid's immune system. If you raise them in a perfectly sterile bubble, they get sick all the time. It's the exposure to a little bit of dirt, to germs, that teaches their body to adapt and get stronger. That's anti-fragility. It's about building a system that literally feeds on chaos. It turns punches into power-ups. It's a complete shift from, oh man, I hope nothing goes wrong, to a confident, all right, show me what you've got. Now, to really get why this is such a game changer, we have to talk about the hidden problem that keeps most of us stuck. It's what I call the fragility trap, and it explains why our obsession with just being resilient is actually holding us back from our true potential. Just look at this breakdown. It says it all. On the left, you've got resilience. What's the goal? To survive stress. The outcome? You just get back to where you started, your baseline. The whole mindset is driven by a fear of things changing, a fear of variability. Now look at the right, anti-fragility. The goal isn't just to survive, it's to profit from stress. The outcome isn't just getting back to normal, it's improving, getting stronger, getting better. And the mindset? You actually welcome the hits because you see them for what they are, valuable information and fuel.
And that fear of variability leads directly to this problem: stress-induced atrophy. This is the invisible wall that stops us from growing. See, when your only goal is to bounce back, you start avoiding anything that might knock you down. You stick to the comfortable path. And then when a real shock hits, and it always does, you burn all your energy just trying to get back to zero. There's no growth, no forward progress. In fact, a system that's protected from all stress actually gets weaker over time, more brittle, kind of like a bone that's never exercised. That right there, that is the fragility trap. So how do we get out of this trap? Well, it's not about thinking positive. We need a whole new operating system for how we approach growth. And that is the anti-fragile system. This isn't some fluffy mindset hack. It's a real structural framework built on 3 core commitments designed to take all that negative energy, all those surprises, and turn them into fuel for growth. And here are the 3 pillars that hold the whole thing up. First, engineered optionality, which is all about smart experiments. Second, the Subtraction Protocol, which is all about getting rid of weakness. And third, Hormesis, which is about adding intentional stress. These 3 work together like an engine. Let's break down exactly what each one means. Okay, first up, engineered optionality. This is all about becoming a strategic experimenter. So instead of making one huge, terrifying bet, like quitting your job and dumping all your savings into a new business, you make a bunch of small ones. The key rule here is that each experiment has to have a huge potential upside, but a tiny, strictly limited downside. For instance, instead of quitting your job, maybe you spend $100 in a weekend building a simple website to see if anyone's even interested in your idea. The most you can possibly lose, $100 in a weekend, but the potential upside, finding a $1 million idea, it's massive. This completely flips your relationship with failure. Failure stops being a disaster and just becomes a cheap data point.
Pillar number 2 is the Subtraction Protocol, and this one is huge. Before you can add strength, you gotta remove your weaknesses. It means you have to become a ruthless editor of your own life. You hunt down and eliminate the things that make you fragile. And what are those things? Well, think about it. Having a super complicated morning routine where if one thing goes wrong, your whole day is a mess. That's fragile. Relying on just one paycheck with zero savings. That is super fragile. A bad diet that makes your energy crash every afternoon. Fragile. When you simplify and remove these weak spots, you shrink the target that chaos has to aim at.
And that brings us to the third pillar, Hormesis. I just call it scheduled stress. This is where we go on offense. You already know this concept from the gym, right? When you lift weights, you're putting a managed dose of stress on your muscles. This creates tiny tears. And how does your body respond? It doesn't just patch them up. It overcompensates, building the muscle back even stronger, so it can handle that stress next time. Well, the same exact thing applies to your mind, your skills, your focus. By actively scheduling small, manageable stressors, like 30 minutes of intense, deliberate practice on a skill you're bad at, you literally force your system to adapt and grow its capacity automatically.
So that's the what. Build options, subtract weakness, schedule stress. But now let's talk about the why. Why does this system work so incredibly well? Because it's not just a collection of tactics. It's a framework that taps into some really deep psychological principles that are hardwired into all of us. Let's get into the science of why this is so powerful.
The anti-fragile system is so effective because it hits 3 big psychological triggers all at once. First, it directly strengthens your cognitive resilience. It trains your brain to stay cool under pressure. Second, it completely flips our built-in fear of loss, what's called loss aversion, making it way easier to take smart risks. And third, it's like a massive amplifier for a growth mindset, giving you real, tangible proof that you can get better. So let's talk about your brain for a second. When you face a threat, your amygdala, that's like the brain's ancient alarm system, just freaks out. It floods your body with the stress hormone cortisol and triggers that fight or flight response. And when that happens, clear thinking goes right out the window. Well, the process of hormesis, of intentionally adding a little stress, is like taking your prefrontal cortex, the rational CEO part of your brain, to the gym. Every time you do it, it gets better and stronger at calming down that initial fear response. You are literally rewiring your brain to see a challenge not as a threat, but as a signal to adapt.
Second, the system lets you hack one of the most powerful biases we have, loss aversion. Study after study shows that we feel the pain of a loss about twice as much as the pleasure of an equal gain, right? Losing $100 feels way worse than finding $100 feels good. This hardwiring makes us terrified of taking risks. But what happens when you use engineered optionality? By designing those small experiments where the downside is tiny, the potential loss becomes so small it barely even registers. This tears down that huge psychological wall that stops most people from ever taking the actions they need to grow. And finally, this whole system just turbocharges a growth mindset. You know the idea from psychologist Carol Dweck that our abilities aren't fixed? But the anti-fragile system doesn't just ask you to believe that, it gives you constant structural proof. Every one of those small, cheap failures from your experiments isn't a failure at all. It's a massive injection of new information. You're constantly learning and adapting. This creates a powerful feedback loop that proves to you, in the real world, that you are in control of your own development. Okay, so we've covered the theory, we've covered the science. Now let's get down to brass tacks. Let's make this real, because anti-fragility isn't a philosophy to just think about. It is a protocol you have to implement. So here it is, your non-negotiable 3-step guide to installing this new operating system in your life, starting right now. But before I give you the steps, I need you to ask yourself a serious question. And really, take a second and think about this. Where in your life are you the most fragile? Is it your finances, your health, a specific skill at work you keep avoiding, your daily routine? Be honest. Where is that one single point where a surprise, a job loss, an unexpected bill would cause the most damage? Because whatever that is, that's where we start. All right, you got your answer? Here's your action plan. It's a simple 3-part checklist. Step 1, you're going to conduct the subtraction audit. Step 2, you're going to build the optionality funnel. And step 3, you are going to implement Hormesis every single day. Let's walk through exactly what to do. Okay, step 1. Your mission, and I mean I want you to do this tonight, is the subtraction audit. Based on that fragile point you just identified, you are going to take one simple action. Let's say it's inconsistent sleep. Your action is to set a non-negotiable alarm on your phone for 9 p.m. that says screens off. That's it. If it's your finances, your action is to open your banking app and set up an automatic transfer for just $20 a week into a savings account. One simple, concrete action that immediately makes you a little less vulnerable.
Step 2, build your optionality funnel. For the next 30 days, your assignment is to launch 3 small, low-cost experiments. Things like spend 1 hour learning a new AI tool, send 3 well-researched emails to people you admire in your field, sign up for a free trial of a new software. The rule is simple. The effort has to be low, the cost of failure has to be close to 0. You're not looking for a home run here. You are just hunting for information.
And step 3, implement Hormesis. You have to schedule stress. I want you to pick your weakest but most valuable professional skill. Public speaking, writing code, whatever it is, you will schedule exactly 30 minutes on your calendar every day for intense, deliberate practice. This should feel hard. It should be uncomfortable. And that feeling of discomfort, that's not a signal to stop. That is the biological signal that your system is adapting. That is the feeling of getting stronger in real time. That is the feeling of getting Hormesis in real time.
And that's it. That is the foundation of your new operating system. When you consistently follow this 3-step protocol, you fundamentally change how you interact with the world. You stop seeing all the uncertainty out there as a threat, and you start seeing it as a landscape of opportunities to get stronger, smarter, and more capable.
And this really brings us to the single most important lesson of this entire explainer. Your goal isn't to build a life that's free from problems. That's impossible. The goal is to build a life where problems actually make you better. You have to stop trying to prevent disorder and start engineering your life to get a predictable benefit from it.
So let's put a bow on this. The anti-fragile shift solves that huge problem of stress-induced atrophy and that fear of things going wrong. And why this matters so much is that it gives you a systematic way to guarantee that you grow from every single setback. By using the framework of optionality and Hormesis, you're not only strengthening your cognitive resilience, you're also lowering the psychological cost of failure, making it easier to take bold action.
And always remember this: productivity isn't about doing more. It's about mastering systems that make growth and focus effortless. So your challenge starting right now is simple. Conduct your subtraction audit tonight. Find that one point of fragility and take one small action to begin engineering your own growth.